now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to the next session of the day, which is on evolving cybersecurity with the cloud. And I would like to now call on the honorable panel members in the order of the sequence with a big round of applause. Joining us first is Mr. SHARAD JAMBUKAR, IT head from Aadhar Housing Finance. Can we have a big round of applause for SHARAD? SHARAD, welcome back to the panel once again, and glad to have you again. Joining next, we have Mr. Bhagwati Prasad Dubey, Assistant Vice President and CISO from Axis Mutual Fund. A big round of applause for Bhagwati. Thank you for joining the panel. Please do take your seat. Joining next, we have Mr. Vijay Kumar Verma, Senior Vice President and Head Cybersecurity Engineering from Jio Platforms. A big round of applause for Mr. Verma. Thank you for joining the panel, sir. And now I would like to call on stage the honorable moderator of the panel, Mr. Debashish Jyotiprakash, Vice President Asia from Qualys. A big round of applause for Debashish. So Debashish, all over to you. Looking forward to a fantastic panel session.
So we have been given 2 hours. Sorry, you'll skip your lunch. But making sure that you go out of this conference very learned is now our responsibility. So welcome, panel members. Good afternoon, everyone. We will be cognizant of the time. We are pretty hungry ourselves, so we know we stand between you and all the good food that the event organizers have arranged for today. So the topic that we are discussing today is extremely trendy, but very broad. It's around evolving cybersecurity with the cloud. This is a topic that I'm pretty sure each of our panel members can talk for a week and still not be done. So what we have tried doing is, we are going to stay away from the typical obvious a bit and align this with the nature of challenges that our panel members probably see around every day, and give out some of their practical learnings so that it helps people who are embarking on the same journey. To set up a small context around this, it is very natural that when you move to cloud, you are probably at a certain level in your journey, right? So what happens is, depending on the maturity at what you are, you tend to do a few things. You also tend to do things in the cloud based on the nature of business that you are supporting, right? The challenges of a bank in cloud versus the challenges of a manufacturing that has moved to cloud would of course be very different. The risk scenarios are different. The regulatory scenarios are different. And the topic is extremely broad today. So what we'll do is we'll start with Mr. Bhagwati today, who is a CISO at Axis Mutual. Bhagwati said, I think the cleanest way of getting started with this topic would be, you give us some visibility into the transformation of your cloud security program. Not your cloud program, but your cloud security program in the last 24 to 36 months. Specifically covering your cybersecurity readiness during the pandemic and post it now.
Yeah, to add to it, like before the pandemic and like for transforming my environment to a cloud. So first, very thing to start with the basic, you should have your inventories in place. You should prepare your policies. Your procedures should be in line to your regulatory requirements. So you should have to gather first all those things together. We also make sure like we have a skilled resource on which platform we are moving out. Like there are a number of players in the market for the cloud, so you can't have every piece of it. So you require an expertise resource for that. So based on our requirements or regulatory requirements, we come up with a one provider, we come up with a resource first, and then we started our journey to move on. But one thing we found, like when we are moving to the cloud, the visibility monitoring was a key aspect which was not meeting the requirement. And the skill set was also a challenge, and there is some support challenges also from the service providers. because they were also evolving at that point in time. Because it's a big boom for the cloud during the pandemic. So like we moved on, we slowly and gradually, but one thing like I would like to suggest to everyone, it is like you move to the cloud and it's done, it's not like that way. Once you move to the cloud, you have to keep on monitoring it. You have to keep on reassessing it, getting the maturity assessment done of your cloud, so that every day you grow up on it. There are n number, like once you moved on the cloud, there will be business will be coming to you with the SaaS models. Like, why can't we go with this? Why can't we adopt different cloud provider? One is okay, then why not two is also okay? So in those aspects, your resource challenge is one more thing, your visibility gets out. There are n number of APIs that are exposed to the cloud. You have to make sure those APIs are consumed by right people. It's accessible to right person. Otherwise, it is an exposed API and you're leaking the data. So we have all, like, as I said, it's basic is important. Like you have to have your inventories, how many APIs you have, how many applications, where it is hosted, who is having access. So those regular check and routine hygiene has to be maintained. So that's what we come up as a framework and we established.
Perfect. Like rallying upon you, you said if one is good, two must be better. Unless the one we are talking about is a problem, then two are definitely not better, right? But many of our industry colleagues that we speak to always speak about how when they begin their cloud journey, they think that they have, that life has given them 1 second chance to not commit the same mistakes that they probably did the last time, which is a clean slate, right? So my question now is for SHARAD sir. In your cloud security journey so far, what have been your biggest learnings?
Hello, good afternoon. Nice to meet the audience again. And coming to Debashish, your question, the biggest learning in your cloud journey. So I think everybody with this advent of cloud adoption has moved ahead, and every organization has some or the other way has brought some or the other cloud components in their businesses. And it is must, and not only must, since few years cloud has been a buzzword, and in the beginning people were skeptical about adopting cloud, and typically in financial services, so where we belong to, so financial services is typically a very conservative a lot in the adoption, and I think we were laggards in the financial services companies, including, like, let us say PSU banks, the banking companies, and then NBFCs. So whoever had limited restrictions or lower controls, those companies have actually moved faster in the cloud. So that was our first learning while we were looking at the cloud adoption. Now coming back from my practical experience from all my BFSI journey, wherever and whichever places I had worked, the larger drive for the cloud adoption is dependent on the skills of the individuals available in the organization. For example, 10 years, almost 12 to 15 years back, when I was working with one of the NBFCs, then the skill set in the infrastructure team was a limited skills, and all were focused on on-premise data center and the related technologies. Now for them, bringing out into the cloud, because there was many attempts many vendors had done to sell us the adoption in the cloud, including the very simple, the non-usable workloads, the UAT workloads, etc. But what happened, a typical challenge, which and is a great learning, that unless we have the skill set with your team, the journey becomes very difficult, or that journey is a non-starter. So I think this is the biggest learning, and the people in the infrastructure team being very adamant at that moment to explore and maybe experiment was very difficult. So with that context, this was earlier, I mean 10, 15 years back. Then as we grew and the skill set in the organizations have been younger and very enthusiastic about trying and exploring. In, let us say, my recent journey of last 3 years in my current workplace, we were very enthusiastic given our backdated or old technology, legacy technology setups. So the journey over last 3-4 years has been very interesting. So now the same learning which we had on the skill sets has played a critical role. Now the younger and enthusiast skill sets are available with us. So we have tried and tested many things. So I will not name a particular cloud, but what we did when we wanted to scan and we wanted to have first-hand experience of the cloud, so we simply started doing something in the cloud. So that is, I will say, second important point, that you should not fear for doing experimentations. So where we tried private cloud, then we tried private banking cloud. So what is the difference between them? Then we could realize and learn firsthand instead of taking some learnings from third parties and reading books. It was important. I understand. So I think that is the second important learning I will pass on to everybody, that whatever you wish to do or whatever journey, the proof of concept is very important. And if you do that with enthusiastic and skilled people, which could be either you have in your team or you may have that borrowed from the CSPs or maybe the system integrators. So that is what very important for your journey. So well begin is half done. So your first step itself is, if it is good and you are confident and you have ticked all the boxes which are important for the cloud journey, I think that is a very important point for you to start the journey.
I think that gives you the most confidence to get rolling. So before I move on to Mr. Vijay with a larger and deeper topic, Bhagwati sir, you want to add on to some of your challenges or things that you think you did a good job moving with the right cybersecurity measures in your cloud journey?
Like, we faced a challenge with respect to monitoring, and currently we have a solutions also who can do the real-time monitoring of our servers, tools, and patch them, because it was not a traditional way of patching. It was a completely different aspect altogether. So we implemented, as per the cloud adoption, we adopted some more new tools, new next generation, I can say SOC, to monitor those aspects. And surely we required the team and we have adopted them, which helped us.
Perfect. Yeah, I think the world is moving towards self-healing infrastructure also. And they say that self-healing infrastructures are easier to build in cloud than in on-prem. So I think it's probably the same resonance. Vijay, Geo is next level. There is no point talking about what Geo can and Geo cannot, right? So Geo is at next level of capabilities, I'm sure. So how did the cloud impact your organization's approach towards cybersecurity?
So the first and foremost, you go to cloud because you want to reduce your go-to-market time. You can build more agility and spend more resources rather than putting and building servers in your traditional data centers, which I think was affected during COVID-19 period. And it has accelerated our growth towards cloud adoption. The first and foremost point, cloud was not new to us. We had already an in-house private cloud based on OpenStack and some customizations to it. So we knew already the nuances of it. The moment we entered into strategic partnership with Azure and Google and built their entire stack in our infra, the biggest thing which comes to your mind is that you need to have a proper network planning, that how your on-premise network is going to connect to the cloud. You need to create maybe connectivity zones or landing zones there. The another piece is that you need to choose identity platform provider very wisely. And how are you going to integrate your existing employees, because they will be using on-premise AD, and bring those kind of policies there. Because your cloud, you can't restrict, it is available from anywhere. Console logins are available where people can go and log in. You need to build, maybe let us in Azure terminology, it's conditional access policies or equivalent thing in other places. So the moment you are there, the another thing that you have is people, they want the agility, and you want to bring basic protection controls and detection controls in the cloud. So the traditional approach of restricting anything have to be more liberalized. And because you want to put traditional toll gates, it is going to reduce the speed. People need to build, spin their machines. So you need to create a policy framework which gets implemented during creation of assets itself, whether you are creating computes, whether you are creating and spinning SaaS and PaaS services. So you give the flexibility to user to create it, but simultaneously you enforce the policy also. The biggest challenge another is how to make your asset discovery and maybe tag a compute to a particular resource. In cloud, you do not get any contiguous space, and in the cloud you can't enforce that every IP belongs to your central IP schema. So let us say you enforce naming and tagging policy where while spinning a compute you have to assign a name to a resource, and later on you can build discoveries around it to discover it. Another thing is that when you build a particular image, you have your own customized image with native security controls built in. So those kind of things which had to change from the traditional approach into cloud, where you have to make adjustment to your security toll gates to allow more flexibility for the teams. Thank you.
Yeah, but you try to keep your policies on par with the infra that's not on cloud, right?
Yeah, policies in the security domain, they remain the same, whether you change, but it needs to adapt to the technology and adapt to the requirements also. That kind of scale that in which you are growing, you cannot have that similar kind of thing. I will give an example here. One is, let us say you spin a VM and you immediately have to go into production and maybe give it a public exposure. So traditionally, before giving a public exposure to an application, you have a traditional controls like you do a baselining, you do vulnerability patching, you do scanning, and then typically an application, it needs to go through application scan analysis to see common, let us say, top OWASP 10 attacks. But a business is in a hurry that he doesn't want to do this. So why don't you give an internet access and expose to limited internal IP address space where so the testing can go ahead. And meanwhile, you can implement your security. The another thing to build speed is that you adopt a shift left approach. Rather than developers coming to at the final stage, why don't you go in the beginning itself and give them the code fragments or give them the guidelines or build security personals of your team with the developer team as well?
No, great insights. I think for people who did the same thing that Vijay described are feeling revalidated. So we'll go back to Sept sir. Maybe a tad bit deeper now from the surface. So identifying workload misconfigurations that are out of compliance or do not adhere to a industry best practice guideline or probably a regulatory guideline, right? This continues to be the biggest security challenge in the cloud. Most breaches in cloud are because of a leaky S3 bucket or a misconfigured IAM policy and stuff like that, right? So given the growing volume of workloads, because that's exactly why you move to cloud, you really want to spin up services as fast as you can. So given the growing volume of workloads, how do you balance this chase of having the right visibility of the workload, visibility from an inventory, posture, control standpoint, versus rolling out them to production after they are benchmarked only? So how do you balance this chase?
I think this is again very, as Vijay pointed out, the business pressure and immediate launch is required, and you have to do all these tick boxes and follow the process, do the SDLC, ASLC, whatever, Agile, Scrum, everything we have to do and get this out. So I think it is very important for the delivery for the business success to preempt some things and pre-plan some things in the security context. Now, as cloud is giving all those, benefits of speed and the configurations and all those things, and along with that, we need to have the hawk's eye on the whatever we are doing. So somebody does, somebody checks. So typically, as you rightly pointed out, the large number of breaches has happened from the misconfiguration, and that is where I think major focus has to be there. So now, while we do particular adoptions or particular things, so our core is traditional still, because we can't change or we can't go away from excluding particular policies which as we already laid down for the betterment of the security. Now, while we do this, can we start early? That is one part. So as soon as, because it is very easy that we can start with whatever limited replica or limited prototype of the product, and we can start working on that. So when the time comes, as Vijay rightly pointed out, that we can open up and we can do the security part later as we grow. So we open up for a limited users, same thing we have done. So recently we have been launching a particular app for the mobile as well as web. So there we have followed the same approach because business wanted yesterday. That is the always case. But still, while we build the features, functionalities, the adoption, the putting into cloud and then getting that tested, UAT has been established. So I think we have covered a major ground for the launch already. So now it is the last mile things which like your final VAPT, that is one important and critical. So that is where now I think where the time will be spent before launch, which now business is also acceptable. So now let us say business says on this date I want to launch, but I can still say within 5 days we will be able to take over the overall controls, and I think we will be ready to go. So this is possible. This is possible where we are able to convince business to certain extent, but that is not always the case. So I think proactive approach will help us, and starting early is very important to ensure that the balance we are able to get between whatever. Now coming to the part, traditional approaches like the VAPT and all those baselining of the application and all that, so that we started early, we visualized. But nowadays, what is happening, shadow IT, which is also taking important step here. So as an IT head, what we are also doing, that earlier solution or earliest delivery of the solution, maybe let us say 6 months for me to deliver, and if it is readily available. Now this is make or buy decision. To certain extent, then earliest part, when we let us say buy something readily available, that saves your time. So that is another area where your commercial comes into place. Instead of building everything and delivering, maybe we can buy ready-made things, and then our cycle is reduced to that extent. And we get the ready-made templates for such, so ready-made templates are ready for, let us say, SaaS adoption. So I think that helps. So I think standardization will help a lot into getting this balancing.
I think you are right. In most of our field exercises with large clients, when they are spinning up workloads on a daily basis, they are concerned about ephemeral instances, leftover instances, unpurged instances, or unlinked instances, that are no longer being used. They do have these exercises, but like you said, business has to align with, new projects. They cannot wait, so they start slow and then adapt on the way. Perfect. So moving on to Bhagwati here now. So the next challenge is identifying software vulnerabilities in the cloud. Now, what do we have in the cloud? Where is it? Who has access to it? How exposed that is? Now, this is the next layer. After the resources or workloads been taken care of, this is the next data, right? So how does one go about this challenge in specific?
What I would like to suggest, with the market is growing right now, there are a number of services are available where you can get your all the assets mapped to it. Cloud is much easier to map your asset for monitoring. Each and every assets are getting monitored with vulnerabilities and patches, whether you have done or not, and you get the maturity score out of it. So that kind of a tools are in the market right now, which a person can adopt and get the visibility out of multiple clouds. Because that was a challenge. You can't get a single visibility from like your SOC or a SIEM. But instead of that, you can have those kind of a platform where you can get a score out of it. And that score keeps on telling you how you have to improve, where your configurations are not matching. If there is any zero-day vulnerabilities, it highlights that, how many assets are getting impacted to it. So where you get the deep and dark web inputs also. So from those service providers. So it's like everything can't be done by yourself. You have to adopt a number of tools. As you're adopting the cloud, you have to adopt the technologies coming ahead out of it.
Some helpers around it.
Yeah.
Perfect, thanks. Vijay sir, your question is a bit out of this traditional cloud security and workload protection situation that we just discussed. In a recent survey, very recent, like July, 4 out of 5 organizations reported that they are heavily confused about the shared security model. 88% said that maintaining clarity in the shared security model has been always challenging. In other words, they aren't quite sure where their responsibility lies for their own cloud versus the cloud provider's responsibility. To me, it looks like there's a document that you should follow, shared security model. But how do you think one should go about solving this confusion?
I think you can have an analogy like you can take services from any cloud service provider. They can give you a basic set of services, but your own security you have to design yourself, because it will pinch you in a way where only the pain is felt by you, not by the cloud service provider. So you need to design your own security framework around it, that what is available from the cloud service provider, you take it as such. How can you augment it with third-party tools? And if there is a gap there, because a lot of gap is there on various kind of services, not those kind of commercial tools are available. And you need to then start building your own tools. I think with the cloud coming into everyone's life, everyone's business, wherever bigger organizations are there, they have to have their own engineering teams, not only to assess the commercial tools, but to also build their own visibility, so that whatever security policy you lay down, so you mean to say that whether that security compliance around that policy exists or not there. You can't blindly trust the security posture metrics or graphs which are thrown by your cloud service provider or any other third-party tool, because they will just give and develop. You are not knowing about what is the background checks, what they are making, and whether they are actually in compliance to it. You will be thrown so many alerts. Let us say you pick up a vulnerability scanner, and literally you will not be able to take action against all of this. So you need to classify whether a particular action, it depends upon the CVSS score, which is, say, if you are able to take care of, say, 9 and above, I think that is pretty good. But unlessly you will not be able to take care of all the alerts which are thrown there. And in the end, security is your own responsibility. That is what I must say.
Thank you, sir. I think, Sharad sir, I was looking at you when you was responding. Something made me think you probably have some more things to add on with the shared security model approach.
Correct. So I think what Vijay pointed out, that ultimately the shared security model we take, or we take exclusive security from the cloud service provider, ultimately it is the responsibility of the organization. So what may come, CSP will be particularly responsible for a part, or bringing up that infrastructure as service, the software as service and everything. But ultimately, it is the organization's responsibility to take care of each and everything what their regulator, their business and their compliances require. So I think that's what I thought I will add. And not only that, but the important point in this context was, like, while we do this journey and we adopt a particular CSP or a particular cloud solution, there are very important fundamental difference I observe and I would like to share. See, earlier, traditional versus cloud, the businesses, or sorry, the IT operations teams were very much confined to hardware. They were feeling it, they were tangibly using them, they were, putting the particular resources to use. So they were doing it physically. Now, if you look at the digital journey, for that part has already been taken over by the cloud. So versus configuring a particular hardware, physical hardware, and configuring a particular hardware resources into cloud, this has become completely digital. So now as this has become digital, so what I wanted to add here is the inventory, the digital asset, which is very, very important and which we lose sight mostly in a manual or physical environment, and it is a very rigorous and painful task to keep that inventory up to date. But whereas in the cloud, as we already start digital, so lot of assets are digitally available. Now consolidating them is very easy. And as Vijay rightly pointed out, which I agree with him, which I also wanted to share my thoughts, that own engineering tools and own engineering teams, this is actually the need of the hour when you are adopting more and more cloud. So my new rule, which I may like to share here, is that the size of your own engineering tools / teams will be directly proportional to the size of cloud you are using.
Correct.
And I think which he has rightly been practicing.
Correct.
And we are also actually on that path, to be very frank. Thanks.
Perfect. Bhagwati sir, very in line with where SHARAD sir left. A currently and constantly updated inventory of all cloud assets is the next challenge actually. So IT has never conquered this challenge for on-prem, right? The CMDB has always been a target of blame game, right? So do you believe we can do the inventory bit better in cloud?
Yeah, all the instances are live. You can get the download at the real time. And or you can have a API consumption to your CMDB.
Correct.
And it can be tracked in a real time. Because what happens when you have a load, you spin up, you spin down, you forgot to close them. So those things are readily highlighted over there, that this asset is lying there.
Perfect.
So that's what the benefit of cloud you will get.
Less tickets. Less ticketing for creating new workloads.
Agree.
Perfect. So Vijay sir, for you I have this question around application infrastructure. Now the DevOps maturity journey is involving things like infrastructure as code, microservices like cloud and containers, right? Or function as a service, or even people are going serverless, right? Now this is becoming extremely prevalent for this next generation of tech companies that are being built solely on the cloud. So do you want to comment on how this is becoming the next thing in building application infrastructure? Application infrastructure without an infra.
Absolutely. You remember what I said, that you went to cloud to reduce your go-to-market time.
Yeah.
So DevOps, or I mean say DevSecOps, is next step to reduce their time. So traditionally we migrated from SDLC to maybe Agile framework, your sprints are run and everywhere. But ultimately the challenge came for migrating the development code from your development environment to SIT, to maybe Q, then to replica, and then to prod. A huge challenge with different kind of goals, your change management processes tagged in between, then security toll gates, and then leveraging your approval process to standard ticketing tools where you seek on approval from different teams which are working on that product to make it live. So we required some kind of a collaboration platform where different teams can come together and knit this entire piece together. So DevOps is an in thing, and it should be adopted by, I think, everyone who wants to reduce their go-to-market time. it will give you a better collaboration among teams. But your entire thought process needs to change, because now in order for DevOps platform to push code to your non-prod and to prod environment, you are basically giving a whole or giving an agent into your each of your workload, which is talking to DevOps platform and pulling and deploying the code as triggered by that workflow. So there has to be a change in mindset in different teams which were earlier acting as toll gates, be it security, be it your change management process, or typically a change request flow, that text flow. Though approvals are there, but somebody was actually executing the approved process. There was a human which was involved who was finally putting the code into the server. But now it's triggered by a machine. So your confidence of your application lead or platform lead has to be there that, okay, this code which has been developed and approved by him had actually gone into the production environment and it will not cause any kind of an impact. So I think that is a traditional mindset change will come into that. And your security teams also have to maybe align to this new culture. Thank you.
Perfect. This is actually becoming a, it's no longer upcoming, it's the current practice now actually. So during our recent discussions, a couple of our customers did speak more voraciously around the said security model of the cloud. Do you think forming a RASI model as a part of the contract with your CSP is also a better control to have black and white responsibilities and ownership around who should be held accountable for what?
I think it is very appropriate, which otherwise any procurement in the larger organization as well as the smaller, when we engage with outsourcing or a particular vendor, we typically have the SLA and the SOW. So now, expanding on that basics of procurement of any services, I think when we look at cloud as a service and cloud service procurement activity, I strongly recommend that while we evaluated cloud through POC, proof of concepts, we learned pluses and minuses of the offerings, and we are now going to sign up or subscribe a particular model of a CSP. In that context, it is very, very important to have the complete fine print read by us as an organization, because organization is responsible ultimately. We, IT team, the whole organization is completely responsible for the reputation due to whatever breaches, security breaches that may happen in the cloud. So now, how do I secure this? That is the important question for every CISO and CIO. Now for that, typically what we observe, while we did POC, parallelly we studied what is the responsibility of CSP, what is the responsibility of my intermediary, which is SI, and what is the responsibility of, let us say, organization. I am the end user, let us say. So now in this context, when I look at the stakeholders, it is very important, again we stick to basics. We create SOW, we mention SLAs, etc. But very important is RASI matrix. So the responsibility of particular task that needs to be charted out in the very beginning. And the more effort we put onto this activity, then your cloud journey will be simpler and better. Because ultimately, whenever security breach happens, ultimately it is like blame game. Though business or IT, if we are not aware about these facts, we will say cloud service provider was responsible. But CSP may not be responsible for a particular task which is in your control, because ultimately I authorize, as an organization, I authorize a particular deployment, I authorize a particular change and go live. So in that context, the principal responsibilities lies with us, I mean as organization. So we need to take care of the RASI matrix well, and for that matter, I think while we evaluated, AWS Cloud has some 66-page document which one has to read through. Then we become very clear that what AWS will not do. Similarly, all other service providers also have come up, CSPs also have come up with similar documents. And maybe private cloud providers also we are demanding that you need to provide these kind of documents. The reason to tell you here is that they are preparing this document meticulously based on what they have on their side as an offerings. Because we don't know what is the black box. We don't know where my data was stored long back. But now AWS, because of statutory regulations, they have started putting your data center and confirming on fine print that your data is stored in Indian geo context and it is not stored outside. So these, I think, our statutories are driving these changes, but we need to read fine print before we sign up. I think that is very important.
Correct. I think we're also running out of time. We'll also take a couple of questions from the audience. My last question to Bhagwati sir, rather interesting, non-technical maybe. With this journey around cloud, securing cloud, the board is also getting, to know a lot of new jargons, right? IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, a lot of ass, right? So what level of cyber education for the board, specifically to understand the cloud side of things, is necessary? Means IT is not new to them. But when you adopted cyber with all these kinds of services, spinning up services faster depending on all this business nature, do you see that there is a lot of board education happening around how to do cybersecurity in the cloud and why is it different, how is it different?
I can say with my experience, previously we have to do awareness session for the board to make them aware of cybersecurity and all the stuff. But currently it is going other way around. Now the board people are learning so many books and watching so many criminals and cyber hack movies, and they are coming up with the questions to us. So what are you doing for that case?
So they are not becoming Azure certified champions and coming back to you, right?
No, it's all general questions that is coming out. With really, I appreciate that they are taking an initiative. The mindset has been developed because of so many. I can praise hackers also.
Okay.
They have done so many good things to make people aware that cybersecurity is a must, and that's the reason why it's now focused everywhere. Even not only the board, even at employee level at our homes also, we are much more concerned out of it.
Yeah.
I would rather say like it should be part of our academics also.
I think it is. In the CBSE board, they have cybersecurity from class 6 onwards, is what I know.
So it's a culture that we have to build up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sir, is there any add on to, did you have to do something
No,
cyber specific?
I think
cloud
as you
specific?
rightly pointed out, I wanted to add on to that. So now boards or the senior members in every organization are well aware, and the very important reason is that the personal digitalization or personal adoption of the cloud. Because everybody, when they are engaging with IT teams across organizations, they are more bothered about knowing how their data is secure. They have Gmail account.
Correct.
Whether they have taken Google Drive, should they subscribe for higher, 100 GB subscription of the Google, what will happen, how the data will be maintained. So I think always every change starts from the self. And I think that is what is driving the change, because by now, the cloud adoption, Google has come, Gmail has come. Now people have reached to that brim that their data storage is limited. Correct. Now they have to move to the next level, and I think that is what is driving this major change.
So boards are adequately educated around cybersecurity concepts specific to the cloud. Perfect. So you want to add some last minute thoughts on?
I think the best thing is whenever something come in news, the board wants to get some assurance that are we safe from this. So in order to give that assurance, so you come out with certain answers, and I think that is more than enough, the education that they are seeking from us, and they are most learned themselves. So they will surprise us, the kind of answer you give us, and you get a counter question from them.
Perfect. Thank you, esteemed members of the panel. Thank you, audience. We can take 2 questions before we move on to the next thing on our agenda.
Thank you so much, Debashish, for wonderfully summing up the panel. In the interest of the time, we will take quick 2 questions. So anybody having a question, please do raise your hand, introduce yourself, and the organization. We have a question. Can we have the mic, please? Sir, kindly do introduce yourself and the organization, and any specific panel member, or it's a generic question?
So it's a general question for all the panel members. My name is Bhaume, I'm from Cybersecurity. There was a very interesting point made about the shared responsibility model. When we also talk to customers, there's a lot of confusion, right? And that's where a lot of the hesitation also stems from. Do you see that at large scale adoption of cloud within an organization, the cloud service provider is willing to accommodate a little when it comes to sharing some additional responsibility currently, or do you see that happening in the future? Because for smaller players, they're very, very particular that this is it. This 66-page document is it. Like you said, the onus lies on us as an organization that you know, we've given you a service, now what you do with it is up to you. Right? So at your scale, what do you see?
I can give an example here. Once you are into very large scale into the cloud, though I said that security is your responsibility, but sometimes you join hands with the cloud security provider to give them the requirement, and they come out with a solution with it. So it is actually a win-win solution for both of us. Like I can give an example. Google is typically based on the OpenStack as a backend, and traditionally their firewall rules are attached, they get attached to a compute like ingress and egress rules. And you have a typical requirement when you want to control a subnet to subnet IP address space rules, typically, because same thing you have been implementing on the on-premise firewalls, and similar thing was available with other cloud service providers. So we have given them the business requirement, this is our security requirement, and they have updated their stack around it, and they have come out with a solution for that as their native security service. So once you join responsibilities and maybe share your requirements with them, and the cloud service providers, they consider it because it will be an added bonus to their offerings.
So I think this trickles down to the smaller players as well. Once at larger scale, you request for a feature and they implement it, then they make it generally available.
I'll just answer your question in addition to Vijay, because it's a large and small. So small companies and whoever are approaching these CSPs, I think nowadays the innovation is every organization is driving, including CSPs are also no exception to that. Now coming to private cloud service providers, the CSPs like Google, AWS and Amazons and all that, everybody is listening to us, or everybody is listening to their business clients for their requirements, because that is where they are learning most, and that is where they are trying to become competitive in the market. So I think though they are most SOP driven, the no-face delivery of the services, still the engagement is there. I mean, but it all depends on the people centric or the account management perspective. So some account managers are very good, they hear you, and their culture, depending on the CSP's culture, that is where when we do POC, we come to know whether they are listening to you and they are ready to help you or not, or they are just going to give you some state of the art and fixed deliveries for a particular service. So I think yes, good CSPs are those who listen to you, they are explaining you, they are educating you and helping you to onboard the cloud. So that is happening.
Thank you so much, panel members, and thank you so much, Debashish, for wonderfully moderating the panel. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this wonderful panel on evolving cybersecurity with the cloud. I would now like to call on stage Mr. Sandeep Kamble, founder and CTO from Secure Layer 7, to kindly do the honors. Sandeep, thank you so much for taking time and doing the honors. We'll start with Mr. SHARAD JAMBUKAR first. Mr. Bhagwati Prasad Dubey. We have some wonderful goodies from Insight and Cybersecurity for all the panel members. Hope you all like them. Next, Mr. Vijay Kumar Verma. And our moderator, Mr. Debashish Jyotiprakash from Qualys. Debashish wonderfully moderated the panel. Sandeep, if you could join the honorable panel members for a group photograph. A big round of applause again, ladies and gentlemen, for this fantastic panel. Mr. SHARAD, JAMBUKAR, Mr. Bhagwati, Prasad, Dubey, Mr. Vijay Kumar Verma, and our honorable moderator, Mr. Debashish Jyotiprakash from Qualys. That was Evolving Cybersecurity with the Cloud, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your knowledge in this panel with all of us. And thank you so much, Sandeep, for doing the honors. And special thanks to Insight for this wonderful goodies that they have given to all of our panel members. Please do visit their booth for knowing more about their solutions and their products, ladies and gentlemen.